What is up, guys? My name is Dave Colagiovanni. I'm the owner to Supra Inspections. This is the Supra Show where I interview the most important people in real estate. Today, hanging out, my co-host, Doug Tricarico, of course, and our guest, fellow home inspector from Estate Inspection Group, Steve Silva. Thank you, man. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
How's everything going?
No complaints. I mean, if I think about it, we could probably find something to complain
Yeah,
about.
Everybody's got
yeah.
something to
But
complain
would
about.
anyone care? No, probably
Yeah.
not. Frankly, this is a tough market. It doesn't matter how established, how seasoned, how green you are. This is a tough market, and this is a market that's now starting to kind of like separate, the cream from the rest.
Yes, without a doubt.
And I think that's why it's something that even if you felt like you had a really good business up until this point, this market is now starting to uncomfortably and
challenge
kind
us
of
all
more frequently than you'd like to admit, kind of exposing those weak points
Without a
and
doubt.
really helping you to be like, this is what I need to brace up. This is what I need to
Without a doubt.
make stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Can't complain. No one's listening.
Right.
Without a doubt. But, I wanted to get into some business development and branding. I think your company does such a great job of branding, and you're so consistent with, just with your company, with content and with the way you approach, social media, and I'm sure how you approach your home inspections and, realtor relationships. What are some of your keys to success about your brand? I mean, and what is it? I mean, what were you really looking to, really solidify as far as a state inspection group? What do you want people to know?
Well, thank you for that acknowledgement. I appreciate it. I think with brand is really just a kind of a visual embodiment of the experience that you really want to provide your paying customers and referral partners with.
Cool.
I think brand is one of those things that brand and reputation are very much kind of directly linked. I think it's one of those things where, if you have a good reputation, then you have a good brand recognition. It's something that they're not interchangeable words, but they are very much related.
Yeah.
And I think that brand is just the way that your experience becomes embodied and then how it gets packaged to share with other people that are going to be a part of the process. Whether it be clients,
Without a
whether it
doubt.
be realtors, whether it be loan officers, real estate attorneys, anyone that's going to somehow handle or digest your product as of a home inspection report.
Yeah.
It's what those people will not just kind of expect from you, but what they've already heard about you and what they're expecting to experience.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And with the social media aspect, I mean, obviously our guys at Why Not You Media would definitely, kind of give me a pat on the back saying that just repetition is key. You have to be out there and it has to be mindful, and it's a lot of work. They like to coin the phrase that you need to be a media company that specializes in a specific job or task.
Yeah.
And that you have to just keep yourself in front of people, so that way people actually think of you when the time comes where they are in need of your services. And that's a really hard thing to do, because in most cases, yes, we can come up with topics to discuss and, points of interest, curious finds during a home inspection that are very entertaining to share, just because, they can be either shocking or just I can't believe that that's someone's house type of thing. But it also it's more than that. It's also trying to figure out what you're going to put out there that will get people to just engage. It's something that, and you don't really know what's going to be a hit and what people are going to like, what people are going to find entertaining, or versus you just sharing something that you find funny or entertaining, and then you're just like, just didn't really get much interaction. I guess no one really cares about that, So I think it's something that needs to be consistent regardless of the outcome. And then with time, when people actually come across your page and try to, do a little bit of research on you, everyone is, always doing a little Google search and Instagram, Facebook
Yeah.
dive about, who it is that they're going to be working with for the first time. Having that catalog and library of content will, one, not just show your consistency, but your longevity as well. Like if you go up onto a page and, with 4 or 5 thumb scrolls down, you're already hitting posts from, 2020. You're just like, well, this person doesn't post
Yeah.
much, do they? You know what I mean? So there is something about keeping your page fresh with different ways for people to either directly or indirectly engage with you.
Yeah.
People might not even like something, but then if you run into them at a networking event, they're like, oh, I saw your video.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, well, why didn't you like it? Like, if you saw it, like, at least let me know that you're watching it, because, like, I know my mom watches my stuff. I got a lot of likes from her.
Yeah, right?
But no, I think it's something that it is definitely I think that it's kind of a discipline. It's something that you need to really go forward with in kind of hopes that, and not hopes, in faith that all of your work of what you're going to be creating content-wise, what you're going to be producing, these are all things that will definitely yield a solidification of your reputation, a resource for people to discover and be like, oh, wow, I learned something by, going in a deep dive onto their page.
Yeah.
And those are things that when you create that catalog of stuff, it's evergreen. It's never going to go out. It's not like a paid advertisement that once you hit a certain amount of clicks, that advertisement expires. You know what I mean? Like,
true.
social media is evergreen. It's always there until you decide to one day delete your page.
People are getting business and they don't actually even know really the business. They may not even be good at what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're stealing a lot of business or producing a lot of business, which is great. But at the end of the day, there's going to come a point where you have to be able to back that up and know the actual business, not just know how to make a quick video that people want to see.
Absolutely. So, everyone likes when people can talk the talk, but it boils down to being able to walk the walk, right? And
Yeah.
I think that it only takes one instant to deal with someone who talks a good game, but then when you actually, give them a shot, you realize, oh my God, this person doesn't know what they're doing. And then that's it. And then more importantly, it's not just it when it comes to you never really using them again. It's the reputation of then that person who had that dead end experience with someone who just talked the talk and not really walk the walk.
Yeah.
That then other people find out, like, oh, you don't want to use that guy. I hired him. I took a chance on him, and man, what a nightmare. And that is something that integrity wise, you can't buy back. You have to earn that positive word of mouth reputation. So you can have the sexiest looking, social media cover that you curate and put out there, but if your process isn't going to be consistently creating results that people are trusting in you to create, you are just pigeonholing yourself into failure.
I think one of the problems right now, being that a lot of this is newer in terms of business, the megaphone from social media is louder than the megaphone for that negative instance. So eventually these reviews are going to start adding up, and then when people do that back end research, that's where it's going to eventually catch up to you.
Absolutely. And I think that there's an opportunity to actually kind of, cut that off at the head by on your social media, especially if you've gained that historical buildup of positive online reviews, which speak volumes, because everyone, whenever you go up and look into a new business, you'll see that they have a lot of 5-star reviews. But what do? You usually first go straight to the lower rated ones and read the worst case scenarios.
How long ago was
Doesn't
that?
matter how many 5 stars there are. I was like, oh yeah, that's nice. Let's see what this 1 star has to say. I mean, that's just like human nature, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a predominantly positive catalog of positive, online reviews, you should absolutely be, leveraging that and really putting that in people's faces. Just like, look, it's not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
I have a proven record of actually walking the walk, and here are the people who are speaking on my behalf that I didn't pay for that. You know what I mean? Like they literally went and took their time and the initiative to share those positive experiences and just speak for me. And that ultimately in business, what you always want is every single client you want to immediately convert into a new business marketer.
A new branch of
You want someone to
networking
just
for
go
you.
out
Yeah.
there and be like a new sales representative for you because
Yeah.
of the experience that you give that
Yeah.
client. They go out and speak highly of you and place every, golden accolade to your name
Yeah.
just by you doing what you are out to do every
Yeah.
single day. And ultimately that is the goal, is that creating that brand recognition
Yeah.
and that reputation by
To back it
actually
up.
doing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
It's like a spider web outside of you. Everyone links to another.
That's
You sell
exactly
one
right.
house, that person could potentially lead to 1, 2, 3 more. Then branch out. That could lead to 1, 2, 3 more. That
Absolutely.
could lead to 9 right there.
Having a history of positive impact and reviews is always a great thing, because that's something tangible that you can point to. And if people ask, if potential clients are asking you, well, why should I hire you? And it's like, look, I can tell you to hire me and all the beautiful reasons until I'm blue in the face, but I welcome you to go and do some
Yeah.
research on me yourself. See what past clients have had to say about
Yeah.
me. And you'll see a consistent theme that most of my clients reference in the online reviews. And I'll leave it up to you to make up your own mind. You know what I mean?
The problem is people are lazy. The social
Some
media,
are.
the social media
Some are.
companies, so oddly enough, don't have the reviews
Right. But
unless you put it
But
out
that's
there.
why it's
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
to kind of cross-pollinate them, because it is important that you want to be able to separate that, BS from the real
Yes.
deal. And the way that you do that is not just by kind of keeping up with the imposter, so to speak, of how engaged they are and how polished they, create an online presence to be, but that online presence is then fortified with actual results.
Yeah.
That's really what you want
Yeah.
to do. But
Yeah.
ultimately as well, especially in real estate and how transactional of an industry this is, it's great if you have that history of all of those positive accolades, but your client in that moment, they don't care how many people you've made happy in the past. They don't care about how many
No.
shiny 5-star reviews. All they care about is what you do for them in that moment, which is why real estate is one of those industries that
Just stressful.
it's stressful, because you really have to show up every single day. There's no
Yeah.
showing up and be like, I
Yeah.
had a rough night last night. I'm just going to come in and dial it in, do the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
Your clients are not going to accept that. I mean, how many times, whether showing a house or, the morning of doing an inspection, if you're feeling under the weather, you're like, I can't cancel. No one's going to be like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we'll postpone this for a couple of days until you feel better. They're
Yeah.
just like, no, we're going to go with someone else.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
one of those things that, for better or worse, fair or unfair, this is one of those industries that you have to be in the moment, you have to be there and ready, and you have to bring your A game, because if you don't, everything just exponentially becomes worse
Yeah.
off of that.
Yeah, I mean, customer service is just like, it's crucially important, even in an industry where like we serve like 95% of our clients like one time.
That's it.
You're
right.
And so like, what's your number one, rule of thumb to just keeping happy clients that you might deal with them one time. I mean,
Yeah.
What's your rule of thumb for just happy clients?
Really just giving them the attention that I know that if having the empathy of understanding the emotional
Empathy, for sure.
drainage that those clients are going through at that moment,
Yeah.
having the ability to understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and putting myself in their shoes and speaking to them and executing the home inspection process in a way that I know that if I were them would make me feel more at ease.
Yeah.
So it's the empathy, the patience, the communication of just really understanding where their main worries are.
Yeah.
I always, and I'm sure you do the same thing, right at the beginning of an inspection, I call my driveway chat. Before we even get started, I always explain to them, what to expect from the process of the home inspection, how I'm going to execute it, what I expect from them, what they can expect from me. And then once I've established those working parameters, my next question is, tell me about the things that you are already coming into this process with heavy on your mind.
Yeah.
And I try to speak to them at that very moment, because the psychology of taking a worried client and really deconstructing that right off the bat will open them up to be more receptive to the educational process of what a home inspection normally really should
Yeah.
be and really is. And by then, once you've addressed that their concerns have been heard, they're valid, we're going to discover what we discover in the home and take extra time to speak specifically to those concerns, you've already you can see like a collective breath be like, okay, we're going to get an answer to that. And
Yeah.
then once you do that, they are so much more open and receptive to understanding and learning the findings of what you discover without being additionally nervous, still trying to process what it is that they're already nervous about to begin with. Because
Yeah.
if you don't address that
I
at
like
first,
that.
then whatever else you discover is just going to be stacked on top of what they're already worried about.
Yeah.
And then the tiniest little thing on top can topple them over. You know what I mean? It's like the straw that breaks their back. They're just like, that's it. House is way too much. I can't do this anymore. And
Yeah.
ultimately, that's what you don't want to have happen. You want to
Yeah.
take the time to deconstruct and obviously document the defects that you come across in a house, because ultimately,
Yeah.
what are you doing there if that's what you're doing? But it's how you document and present those findings that always is the main difference between a successful home inspection and what in the industry is considered to be a kill deal by a home inspector.
Yeah.
If you don't take that responsibility as seriously as possible, then you're there not just doing your clients a disservice, but the realtor who either referred you or didn't refer you a disservice, because
Yeah.
there's countless hours that the realtor put in to justify your presence to begin with.
Yeah.
So if you don't show up taking that responsibility seriously and show up like a cowboy, be like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, good luck, bye. Then you're done. You're done. You're like your longevity in this industry has immediately started a downward trajectory.
It's really about creating a personalized customer experience.
Absolutely.
Because a restaurant will service 300 people in a night.
Yeah.
One bad review can kind of get blended away in time and isn't going to stand out as much. If I service 20 to 40 people in a year, I had a great year. So that one
Yeah.
bad review is a lot more detrimental
Yeah,
in our
sure.
businesses
Yep.
than it is for that restaurant that, all right, someone got sick at, or they had a bad experience with the
Right.
waiter. The waiter had a bad night personally, and
No, it can be
that stuff can
devastating.
get
Yeah.
blended out. Whereas we're working with individual clients, and crafting that personalized customer experience is very key.
We're not working in a controlled setting and cranking out the same tchotchke millions of times over, right? Every single home, I mean, even when from my construction project management days, I would always say a builder can take the same construction documents and side by side build two identical homes and have two completely different building experiences, because each home is a prototype, not
Yeah.
just for about the actual type of construction the material is used, but then you have, human error. You have things that are out of your control, like the, whether or not certain materials get to you at a specific time. You have illnesses that you have to manage. You have, acts of nature that can potentially, wash away all of your erosion control. And now you have to spend an entire week just getting all of your dirt and topsoil back onto the property that washed out into the street. There's so many different things that can happen. And especially when you're coming into selling a home and inspecting a home, it's how did the sellers maintain that home?
Yeah.
What did they do? What didn't they do? What conditions are you encountering on the inspection day, where you can inspect the same home one day, beautiful, bright and sunny, the other day with, torrential downpour. You'll have two completely different reports. A chunk of it will be the same.
Yeah, without a doubt. I
Major
agree.
findings and concerns of that same home under two different sets of circumstances will completely alter what the main, findings of importance are really, discussed with. And, that's why I always tell my clients, like, if it's downpouring, I was like, it is a perfect day for a home inspection, because I can't tell you about a leak that's happening
Grab your
when it's
umbrella.
not running on a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah.
Even like atmospheric impacts on the house. I remember when I was a project manager, I went to this. We were managing a bunch of properties for the city, and I went to this. It was like a theater in Brooklyn, and they were getting water issues in this area. So I'm sitting there like taking a hose. I couldn't find the leak. Turns out the guy who was in charge of the building, he goes, no. What happens is when the winds are over 20 miles an hour and the rain's coming from the east and is hitting this, we get a ton of water.
Yeah. Wow.
It was just like the perfect storm. But
Right.
when it's colder out, you'll have the materials of your house expand and contrast depending
Yeah.
on the temperature.
Right.
And you could get water in because it contrasts. Or in the summer when it's hotter, it expands and the
expanding.
water doesn't
Yeah.
come in. There's
Yeah.
little things like that just, when you were there when it's 90 degrees, aren't going to show up. But when especially the older
Yeah.
houses.
There was one specific house that when I discovered a moisture infiltration in the basement,
Yep.
the seller got angry with me. And I was just like, look,
the
I'm not
seller?
yeah. And he happened to be there. And I was like, look,
Oh,
I'd
man.
be happy to take you down and show you. And he's
That's
just
a
like,
perfect
I
story.
don't understand. How does this happen? I've been in this house for 25 years and I've never had it. But it was an inspection in the winter.
Yeah.
His gutters, it was also it was like late winter. So it was when you get
You
days
get
already
thaw.
getting into like the high 40s and everything starts to
starts to
melt
melt.
away, but then it still
Yeah.
freezes at night. So his gutter had a missing gutter extension.
Yeah.
And as that snow was melting away, there was also a low spot with negative pitch coming back towards the house. So that gutter was just dumping into a little pond into the front. So then it would freeze overnight, and then during the daytime, it would then
Wow.
thaw out, and then that moisture through hydrostatic pressure, and then we came to find out that there was a settlement crack in the foundation that wasn't fully transferred to the inside, but it was kind of opening in like a wedge, so it was open
Wow.
to the outside.
There you go.
And then that water was pushing through as that water melted, but in normal conditions, that water wouldn't be ponded enough to have that volume come into
Wow.
the basement.
Yeah.
So and he's just like, oh yeah, my landscaper, he removed that when he hit into it with his lawnmower, and then that extension that I had there, I never put it back. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, that's what
It's
happened.
it's
So it's
amazing.
conditional, like you said. It's
Yeah.
you know, a home inspection is nothing more than a snapshot write up of that home in that specific moment in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is constantly changing around it. To your point, construction materials are in a constant state of expansion and contraction, especially up here in the Northeast where we get the extreme hots, the extreme colds, and everything in between. This summer, particularly with the volume of water that we've gotten through all the rain, it's
Yeah.
just been
Biblical.
crazy with how we've
Yep.
just been encountering so many roof leaks, so many damp basements and crawl spaces, more so than in the 8.5 years that I've been doing this. It's like,
Yeah.
now it's almost like, oh, I didn't write anything with any water staining today. That's weird. You know,
Yeah,
like
right?
it's
Yeah,
like because of those
exactly.
conditions have just been so conducive to showing themselves, and thankfully, and great. You know, like I think it's a good thing that it's been those conditions, because it's been able to educate our clients so much more about these extreme conditions.
New York State is in the process of requiring sellers to eventually start filling out the property condition disclosure.
Yep.
Wow.
And
Big
helps.
big deal.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could justify it, but from a seller standpoint too, there's a lot of concerns about how this is all going to shake out. I mean, you could never have water in your house. You sell the house, and 2 days later, water comes in. You're not liable.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Like it's
Okay.
there's really a lot of things that have to kind of get understood from both sides as a buyer and as a seller, and even attorneys and realtors to learn what exactly the effects of this change going to mean. It used to be just $500 at closing, given to discount, refund to the seller,
Right.
to the buyer, and it was done with it. They just didn't fill out the form. Other states have started to require it, and now
Wow.
New York's in the process of starting to require it.
Whoever knows about selling real estate in New York, it's kind of one of like those, you know, butt of the laughing jokes, like a $500,
Yeah.
you know, release. Like, okay, what is that?
It's like
You
an
know?
insurance policy.
It's almost a joke, and it
Yeah.
obviously is more protective for the sellers. And as a seller, you're like, yeah, I'll sign that. Like, absolutely, you know. I think with any change, there are going to be some extremes that then suss out where the majority of people really should sit. I have to say that the sellers, even with this new change, kind of were gifted with such a wet summer, because even if historically they never had any real leaks,
Yeah.
this was a summer
They
that
did
it was
now.
going to happen.
They did
and they
now.
were at least able to now be like, I get to say that and, you know, let you know about it. But because the market is still so lopsided to be a
Yeah.
seller's market, people are going to buy it anyway because there's no inventory. So the whole thing is
Yeah.
that I joke around, like, if you have a cardboard box that you can tilt up with a twig and stick a for sale sign in front of, I guarantee you at least 3 families from Brooklyn are going to come up
Yeah.
that weekend and check it out.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's nothing else to be seen, to
Yeah.
be bought. So
That's it.
to your point, I think it's something that, of course, it's a big change, you know, not just mentally, but potentially financially for sellers. But because it's still such a strong seller's market, and that we had such an extreme wet season out of the norm, I think it really kind of it will give future sellers or current sellers as much more peace of mind that if it didn't happen during this summer, or happened during Sandy or Ida or whichever one of the other storms that came through, that we're probably okay, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, with the inventory where it is, and occasionally we are still seeing multiple offers. I tell my clients, at what point are you going to be not upset over $5,000? When they ask, how much do you think we should offer? Well, what's it worth to you? At what point is $5,000 and you find out that you missed it within that threshold, are you going to be upset or not upset? And that's kind of where we have to be, because this is the biggest purchase of your life until you buy your next house.
Yeah.
But
I would imagine that one of the hardest things that realtors have to deal with now is that either on the buyer side or the seller side, everyone is still operating with that short-term memory of what things were like pre-COVID or even during COVID. So sellers are expecting to have this piranha feeding frenzy for their home that gets listed and to get X amount percentage over listing for it. Buyers are thinking, I can't believe that this house that cost X in 2019 is now costing Y right now, and I have to pay X amount more dollars per month because of the interest rates. Like I feel like everyone, and I find myself being guilty of this as well, mentally, rather than being in the now of how things are shifting and frankly continuing to kind of worsen or get more difficult, depending on what side of the transaction you're on, it's really hard to disconnect that short-term memory of what things were like not that long ago.
A good number of these buyers have taken that down payment money and renovated their own house or put an addition on their house to make it work. And they said, all right, I'm going to wait this out a little bit longer and I'll stay where I am.
Yeah.
The other thing is some of the houses that are coming on now are the ones that didn't sell a few years ago because they weren't the best of the best and were generating that frenzy. Or there are people that kind of waited out. There are older people that are going. I mean, a lot of people are sticking. They have low rates. They're sticking to where they are, and that's what's causing the industry. People can't afford to trade up, so they're going to stay where they are, fix up their house, and then push it down the line.
It's really hard to walk away from a sub 3 or 3.5% interest rate to then be like, yeah, I'm going to trade that up to an 8+.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, what?
Especially talking where we are financially as a country now. Everything's more expensive. You go to the supermarket, you buy 5 things, and it's $100.
Yeah. I saw the funniest meme the other day. It was a snapshot of Kevin McAllister from Home Alone walking back from the store with his groceries. He was like, the hardest thing to believe about this movie is that Kevin was able to get that many bags of groceries for $19.
Yeah. That's
And
funny,
it's just like, wow, this is a sign of the times that we're in. It's crazy.
Imagine the cost of that vacation today to take, what was it, 12 kids to the brother-in-law, sister-in-law
14
away.
people,
14,
2 families, all expenses paid.
Yeah.
First class for the adults to Paris on the holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next
That's
question
a
is,
down
what
payment.
did Kevin McAllister's dad really do for a living?
I know,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Steve, look, I have to end on this question. I have interviewed multiple home inspectors, and I've been saving this one just for you because I think you got the answer to
This is
this
getting
one.
spicy
Okay.
now.
Oh, man.
What is the future of home inspections?
What is the future of home inspections?
Where could this end up? I mean, like, are we going virtual? Are the tools getting better? I mean, are we still? I mean, I would say, like, I was asking a home inspector years ago. He goes, I used to be able to show up to a home inspection with a screwdriver and a flashlight.
Yeah.
And now we've got tools like you wouldn't believe.
Showing
So
up like Batman. Right.
Yeah,
With
right.
all these gadgets. I think that because of the nature of our industry, in essence, we are consultants for hire. Mm-hmm. Do I think that our job can be outsourced to AI and completely replaced with robotics? I don't, because what we do is subjective to our opinion.
Without a doubt.
I do think that there is absolutely room, and there will be item or areas of what we do that will absolutely be replaced with technology, with certain aspects of AI. And frankly, I think it's something that is good because I think it'll help us become more efficient. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, our industry was born because a lot of home buyers in the 70s didn't have an Uncle Tommy who was a contractor that could assist me during my showings. So us as an industry were born because realtors were not willing, and really, frankly, should not be willing, to put themselves on the line to speak for the house, of the house's defects and what's there to be repaired. And ultimately, that value of that built up experience, know-how of construction and ability to educate buyers, there's always
Yeah.
going to be a market of people who just want to know
Yeah.
what they're buying. And to your point, this is the biggest purchase of your life. You know,
Yeah.
this is something where you want to do as much research as possible and hire the best, most knowledgeable people to help better educate you on what you just don't know. So I personally think that there's always going to be room for us. I
Yeah.
think that the industry itself is going to naturally, just like every industry, ride waves of expansion and contraction as we are going into this more challenging, limited inventory market. I do think that we as an industry will see a slight contraction.
Yeah.
But that's an opportunity for the established home inspectors who have reputation, systems, processes to capture more market share. Because let's be honest, in the beginning of COVID, everything was happening so fast and the volume was just so
Yeah.
high that if you hung a shingle that said, I can do home inspections, like, great, get your ass
Yeah.
in here. We need you.
Yeah.
2 o'clock.
And that's
Tuesday.
it, right? Exactly. We need you 10 minutes
Yeah.
ago. So there was, and it's great. A lot of guys got into the industry, were able to, provide for their families, provide value to clients, and they did well for themselves. But if you are hitting that one-man show ceiling where everything is being answered by you, you have no systems in place, you don't have any systems for growth, sustainability, this is when the market, the way I see it changing, that's where it's going to be really difficult for guys like those to stay afloat, just because
Yeah.
there is going to be less inventory, which means volume is going to come down, which means there's going to be less transactions for you to be able to provide your service for, right? So doubling down on your value add, doubling down on the experience that you bring to the table and that you provide to your clients executing your work, and more importantly, making sure that you continue to double down on the building of those relationships for referral partners, for anything that can potentially get you more exposure. Then it just becomes a numbers game,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's something that we are absolutely about to see a change, a dramatic change, and for how long it lasts, who knows? At the end of the day, we are just at the very beginning of another election year. We know exactly what happened at the beginning of the last major election year. I'm kind of nervous to find out what's going to happen
Yeah.
this year, frankly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one thing that will absolutely be impacted the same exact way that it was impacted last time is real estate, because one thing that COVID taught us, regardless of who was running the state at the time, who said that real estate sales and home inspections were not essential services, there is nothing more essential than having a safe place to live.
Without
And
a
ultimately,
doubt.
everyone is always going to want to make sure that they have a home that's in a good neighborhood, that's safe, that they understand how to maintain it, how to repair it. There's nothing more essential than that. So to answer your question, the future of home inspection, I think, is a solid one. I think it's just
Cool.
going to require whoever is continuing to stay in it to evolve and become smarter with what it is that they do,
Yeah.
what time that they pour into maintaining certain aspects of their business. And I think that ultimately relationships are key. If people don't know that you're still there, you're still the one to consider at the top of the list whenever they are in need of your specific service, that's no one else's fault but yours. So you have to figure out a way to keep yourself engaged, to keep yourself in the forefront of people's mind. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it, and some of them are not very difficult to do.
Yeah.
It just requires that commitment and that discipline to keep it going.
Without a doubt.
I think it's still going to be a wonderful industry that, frankly, will eventually, with the curve, come out, and we'll see better days for sure. These are just going to be more challenging days to operate within. I don't think it's going to be as low of a hanging fruit industry as what may have been historically. I think it's really going to require active home inspection business owners to really elevate their game and think on a higher level in order to just see this survival through.
Without a doubt.
And,
Anything to
I
add to
think
that?
as we get more interconnected in society, our homes are getting more interconnected. One of the most important things, I think, for a home inspector is to understand history, is to understand the history of these systems, why they were put in place, why this was a heating system, why this was popular. And as newer homes are built, understand what's going on right now, because that's going to impact your inspection 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Where materials are getting cheaper, the lifespan of the heating systems or the plumbing are changing. So as we go 10, 15 years down the line, understanding what's being built now, and it'll be interesting to see the impact. I mean, the homes are eventually
Yeah.
going to start being able to report to you what some of the issues are, but understanding beyond the systems that can be connected,
Sure.
the exterior curtain wall, the things like that, and why they were put in place as they are now.
Oh yeah, I think and this is more of a question of the future of home building. I think that eventually these smart homes will actually become smart homes. The same way that, I don't know what the name of the plug is, but you have that little reader that you just plug into your car and it gives you a quick diagnosis report of what's going
Yeah.
on. I think eventually
Yeah.
construction will get to the point where those systems will communicate with a centralized home monitoring brain, which will definitely help home owners in the future understand what's happening, because it'll basically just be like on a dashboard and the check engine light comes up specifically about your hot water tank, or your plumbing lines are showing a drop in pressure. There might be a break somewhere, and I think that
Yeah.
will be something that develops in the future, but it's no
And
time soon. And to your
I
point,
think it's already there in
it's getting
large
there.
in large construction projects.
It's getting
in these
there.
new buildings.
Right.
It's there.
It's getting there.
I remember
But from a residential standpoint, there's definitely going to be a much longer
Yeah.
on ramp for that. And to your point, generationally, there are categories of construction methodologies that we can categorize. We know that there's pre-war buildings. We know that there's construction from the early 60s to the early 80s are built way differently than even construction from the early to mid 90s. A home that's built in 2004 or early 2000s, I always tell my clients, like, look, this is an older new construction home, because if this
Yeah.
home was built the same way it was today, it'd be built exactly the same way, because construction methodologies have not yet evolved to the next layer. But obviously, inspecting a home built in 2000 versus a home built in 1981, there's already differences,
Yeah.
and that comes to the understanding of the historical generational construction methodology evolving
Yeah.
over time. I do think personally that that's going to be the next thing. I think there's going to be like a Carfax for homes.
Little
I think you're just
USB
going to be
port.
able to have like a historical breakdown of
Yeah.
everything that broke down, and then talk about buyer's protection. I think that that's really where it's going to be at. But you need to have so much buy-in from all of the different system manufacturers, building manufacturers, in order to have one universal system that communicates
Make
all into that.
Sears built homes.
Yeah, well,
The
right,
Sears-
exactly.
the
But
Sears
that was a
Roebuck.
benefit, right? Because Sears literally dropped off pallets in front on an empty lot, be like, that'll build you a home. Good
Yeah,
luck.
yeah.
And everything was under one roof. Now,
Yeah.
the way that the industries
Yeah.
are completely segmented, it will take a massive effort to move forward into that path. But that's the only way I see it happening in the future.
Yeah.
Whether it happens in our lifetime, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it would definitely happen at a much faster curve with the introduction of AI. I think there's going to be, questions like, well, how do we actually make this work? I think that that's some of the, the extra computing power that's going to be harnessed to get us there. But
Yeah.
for right now, we are very much operating within the confines of what's happening socially. And I think it's just something that, like I said, I'm excited to see where it goes, but I'm also kind of scared to see where it goes, especially with what's happened these last handful of years. I mean, everyone's bingo card is just completely wide open at this point. And I don't think anything that happens would surprise anyone at this point. So
funny you brought up that house that was an older new construction that was built in the early 2000s. Well, now we're at that point where the roofs have
You're
to
gonna
start
have some
getting
turnover.
looked at.
Yep.
You're going to have to. So that house that might have been built in 92 essentially might be more of a newer house than that house built
because
in
the
2005.
turnover would have happened
Because
more
they've already
recently.
redone the roof.
Correct.
They've already replaced
Absolutely.
the heating system.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly right. But that's where, having a really good quality and qualified home inspector really comes into play, because you
Absolutely.
really need to leverage someone's understanding and knowledge of these systems
Yeah.
to educate you on that, because most home buyers don't understand that.
No.
When home buyers come into a home, they're looking like, that's where my Christmas tree is going to go. That's where I'm going to mount the TV. That's the level that they're thinking of. They're projecting their lifestyle into a new space to see if it fits. You as
Yeah.
a home inspector are there to tell them, okay, well, everything behind all of that this is how it works. This is what you're going to need to be aware of. And that is the value that home inspection really should bring to the table, is that educational aspect, not just pepper spraying the house with defective red flags. It's taking the time to identify those red flags, but to educate your clients of what it is that you're there to do, and why, even if you find something that's scary, take the time to explain it, so that way they can kind of take a collective sigh of relief and be like, okay, we know that this is wrong, but our inspector explained about, who fixes it, what kind of fixes are options to fix. Here's the questions that you should equip yourself with to ask these licensed contractors with. Then we'll be able to get our answer. And you, as a home inspector, you've done absolutely not just your bare minimum, but you've already gone above and beyond with taking the time to explain to those clients and really educate them. And that's where your value comes into play.
I had a client one time, when you talked about envisioning themselves in the house. Every house we had like 5 lined up. And by the time we got to the 3rd house, they kept saying, well, our couch isn't going to go in here. Or I said, the house is $600,000. The couch,
Buy a new couch.
$4,000.
For the love of God, buy a new couch.
Get rid of the couch, worry about the house, and then we'll figure this out.
Exactly. People get they get lost in the woods by just staring at one tree. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard. But those are the clients that take a little bit of extra hand holding, and that's where the expertise comes into play, because then you kind of help to guide them to really show them what they should be thinking about, rather than being distracted by all this noise.
Absolutely.
Well, Steve, really appreciate your time.
Guys, it's fun, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Steve Silva with Estate Inspection Group. Appreciate your time, man. That was really awesome, dude.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, man. Thank you.